Namaste, I am Saumya Dutta. I am co-convener of South Asian People's Action on Climate Crisis and also trustee and convener of Climate and Energy Group of MOSAM, that is Movement for Advancing Understanding on Sustainability and Mutuality. With this energy scenario that we are seeing, and energy means not only electricity, but electricity plus other forms of energy that we consume, or the entire primary energy basket that we consume both globally and in India. With the COVID-19 crisis, what we have been seeing is that it is obvious that the demand for electricity and demand for other forms of energy like petroleum has dropped substantially. In fact, till last month in July, there was a point when the electricity demand dropped roughly 19% from what it was same month last year. This was obvious. One thing that was being projected by industry and business is that okay, once the start of the lockdown ends or is, then it will come up. It has not happened exactly in that fashion. It is not going to happen in most states and most countries like that we are seeing. But this also gives us an opportunity of transition of two natures, one from dirty energy based on coal and oil also, but at least coal first, because coal is the most dangerous fuel, most dangerous energy source in terms of not only the climate crisis that we are facing, but also in terms of air pollution, which is very severe in Indian cities, and also in terms of water consumption, because coal next to nuclear is the second largest per megawatt hour water consumer in terms of consumptive use of water. Any megawatt hour of coal power consumes anything between 4,000 to 5,000 liters of water, that is the consumptive use, and there is 8 to 10 times which is water polluting, both thermal pollution and chemical pollution. So, these three India is facing a crisis. One, India has the largest number of cities, biggest cities, where people are dying out of pollution. Out of 20, this has been coming up very clearly, out of 20 most polluted cities in the world, 13 to 14 belongs to India. So, this is a very serious case. A conservative estimate shows 1.2 million people die, premature death every year in India. The second, as I said, water, which is extremely important, what we normally do not look at when you look at energy, because India's water availability was around 500 1000 cubic meter per person per year in the mid 50s to late 50s. Today it is 1450. So, today we are already water stressed as per UN definition, which says if you have under 1700 cubic meter per person per year, that country or that society is water stressed, and if we go close to 1000, then it will be water scarcity. And many of our states which are planning these coal power plants like Maharashtra and all, they are, many of their districts are actually going into water scarcity, because this 1400 is only Indian average. Many of the states are close to 1000. So, these three major problems, one is climate crisis, and we have seen that recently we have seen the Ministry of Earth Sciences of Government of India bring out this climate assessment report, which was released by the minister on June 16th. The minister released it on June 19th. This was made on the put on the public domain on June 16th. What we have seen in that, it is a Government of India report. They are saying that heat waves are increasing, and by 2100 the heat waves will increase 3 to 4 times. The sea level rise rates have gone up from 2.2 to 2.5 to 3.5 mm. They have projected fairly high temperature rise by the mid century. In fact, when they were presenting in mid century to 2060 data, they were saying 2.3 degrees Celsius rise from the 20th century average, not also from the pre-industrial time. So, those are catastrophic rises, those are catastrophic results that are happening already, and which being clear indication, clear trend lines are there. So, most dangerous contributor to this is definitely coal, and India today gets roughly around 67-68% in the normal times of its electricity from coal, and gets 55% of its total primary energy, non-commercial primary energy from coal. If you take commercial primary energy, if you take the total energy, biomass, since traditional biomass still gives something. So, coal's percentage comes down a bit, but commercial energy which is traded, which is bought and sold in the markets, coal provides 55%. This is an unsustainable situation. A country and a region which is extremely dependent on normal climate and weather, which is completely dependent on the monsoon being correct in time, monsoon being right temporally and spatially. That means it should come in time, more or less in time, it should go to different regions in time, and it should also be uniformly distributed as farmers, fish workers, artisanal workers, everyone, forest people, everyone is now accustomed to, and their livelihoods are dependent on this. And the climate crisis driven by this fossil fuel emissions is actually putting all this into jeopardy. The monsoon patterns have already changed. In fact, several years ago, India Meteorology Department did a 100-year analysis of Indian monsoons, and it has been seen that the monsoon patterns have already changed. Some places the rainfall have increased, some places which are very dependent on dry land irrigation, that is rain fed irrigation, there the monsoon rainfalls have gone down and the pattern has changed. The number of rainfall days actually have gone down, and that is leading to both floods and droughts, because earlier it was something like 44 to 45 rainfall days in the monsoon season or the total year. Now it has come down to 23 to 24 days, roughly half. So, between a rainfall day and another rainfall day subsequent, there is a huge gap. So, these are already impacting agriculture, impacting our water availability, and this will impact more and more. So, all these are very clear signals that we must change from fossil fuels, and that phrase transition, because you cannot do it overnight. If the economy depends on coal up to 55% of its commercial energy, then you cannot do it overnight. So, you have to do it in a planned manner, but a reasonably fast pace, so that you do not end up in a crisis which will be putting say 50-60% of your people in dire straits. Already with the economic condition, something like 40% of our people, because of the economic condition and because of their quite strong nature dependence on natural resources and natural commons, they are already quite vulnerable. So, any country, any government with any sanity and responsibility to people cannot go on like this, has to shift gear. So, and this transition will also has to be a just transition, because transition has been projected. Transition means in the normal energy dialogues, transition has been presented as something like only you go from coal, oil and gas to solar, wind, geothermal and ocean thermal and wave and tidal, like that. That is one part, that is an essential part, but that is only one part, because we will also take into account three other very critical considerations of this just transition. One, obviously now the trade unions have started, and I have been taking part over the last 5-6 years in both the COPs and the UNFCCC COPs and many other international meetings in these dialogues, and trade unions now are bringing this up, that what happens to the workers who are working in say coal mines, coal power plants, in the oil fields, oil supply chains, gas supply chains. So, that is one thing. So, they obviously cannot be over a period of 20 years, you can't say even the new workers they will be put out of job. So, they have to be actually looked into, they have to be retrained and redeployed in the new emerging clean energy industries, but that is not the end of it. In fact, since these workers have somehow benefited from the dirty energy industry, whether it is a coal mine worker or a coal plant worker, they have suffered a little bit, but they have benefited by reasonable salaries, incomes. But there are a larger number of people who have been displaced, whose lands have been taken, whose lands have been poisoned, whose water has been poisoned. These include farmers, fishers, Adivashis in very large number, because in India the maximum displacement for coal mining, coal plants, etc., and dams, majority of the dams in that area either supplies water to the coal, like Singrauli. The Rihan dam was made and it supplied water to all the coal power plants and the coal mines. Similarly, other dams, Hirakud, they were made to supply, basically made to supply not irrigation water, but to the aluminium plant, Belco and others. So, this kind of people who have suffered extensively, who have not benefited at all by these dirty energy industries, what happens to them? The normal just transition dialogue do not talk about them, but we cannot leave this larger number of people by the wayside if we have to have a really just transition. So, the just transition also has to take into account this, and the fourth element in the just transition is what happens to the ecological destruction that has already been wrought. Like huge areas of coal mines have completely destroyed the forest, made the soils toxic. Now you know that even several countries like Bangladesh, they are trying to make coal power plants in the near the Sundarbans, like the Rampal, the Varayan, and we have fought against the Rampal both in Bangladesh and in India. So, if this kind of very productive, extremely critical ecosystems are devastated, when we talk about a transition from dirty energy to cleaner energy and better employment, cleaner employment, better employment, then we must also talk about restoration of those ecosystems. That will be the fourth element of a just transition, because you can't just, like the Fukushima or the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, you can't just cover them and leave it as it is, or the old coal power plants you can just abandon and walk away, because those ecosystem needs to be restored. Nature has a power to restore itself, but we need to help in that. So, these four elements in the just transition has to be there, and now we see an opportunity, because now throughout the world the power demand, the electricity demand has gone down, the transportation fuel demand has gone down. So, there is a huge excess capacity of the dirty energy industry. Now, if we start very clearly, intelligently, like Germany has taken a good step, they should go further, but Germany has really taken a good step, we must give that credit. Now, if we plan to phase out at least very quickly the older coal power plants, the older infrastructure of fossil fuels, which are already in a very bad state, which has the maintenance cost and others have already high. So, it will not entail any extra economic cost to the economy, because those are already shut. A large number of coal power plants and mines are already shut down because the demand is not there. So, this is right time to phase out in a very quick time span, maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, a large number of coal power plants which are 25 years and more, older power plants, and associated very old coal power plants where the high grade seams have already been exploited, or where up to 100 meter, 150 meter coal seams have already been exploited. The others have to be phased out too, but the first quick phase out can happen very clearly, very quickly, with minimal economic cost, minimal displacement through these older coal power plants and coal mines and infrastructure, dirty fossil energy infrastructure. The next step is obvious, because today the cost, even the clear explicit economic cost, not including the externalized cost of solar energy and wind energy in the right kind of sites, are lesser than new coal power plant. So, that is very clear today, and that is not only in India, that is true in a large number of countries, but very clearly in India, because we have seen the recent, the Rewa ones, 2 rupees 90 paisa, 2 rupees 92 paisa per unit, whereas NTPC itself said that if they have to build a new coal power plant now, it will be 3 rupees 30 paisa to 3 rupees 50 paisa per kilowatt hour of generated power. So, there is a very clear case. The other point that I want to highlight is in terms of employment, because in India we have seen over the last 1.5 decade to 2 decades, we had a very good economic growth, GDP growth, without a commensurate job growth. So, the number of unemployed, the number of young people, number of middle level people who are either losing job or not finding any job is increasing very fast. This will be an explosive situation. This will not be a demographic dividend, this will be a demographic destruction. So, if we look at the renewable energy sector, and I am talking from my personal experience of doing field level studies, research studies in multiple areas, like I did a good study in Tata Mundra and Adani Mundra there in 2012. For a 4000 megawatt power plant, the total number of employment is 700 in the Tata Ultra Mega, the Coastal Gujarat Power Limited, the Ultra Mega power plant. The number of displacement that they had, economic displacement, there was something like 7,000 fish workers, and coastal fish workers normally are fairly well off. If the sea is not disturbed, their catch and the income from that, they can live their life roughly at a middle class, fairly comfortable middle class level. Though their life is very hard, they have to face danger, they have to go out in the sea, but the earnings are reasonably well if you are not disturbing the sea very much. There, because of these two mega coal power plants, now the sea is so disturbed, the Gulf of Kutch, that these 7,000 fish workers have lost up to 60% of their catch and income. So, for the 700 jobs that has been created, which only 3 people were from the locality, they were temporary chowkidars, the rest are all from outside. You have displaced 7,000 very well off livelihoods. There are 2,500 to 3,000 small salt panners who are also earning reasonably well. Their livelihood have been displaced. There are something like 1,000 to 1,200 pastoralists. Their livelihood have been displaced because all the pasture land either has been taken out or it is completely polluted by coal dust and fly ash. And there are huge number of deaths in cattle, abnormal abortions in cattle. All this we have documented, I have written those reports. So, it is very clear, if we go plant after plant after plant, coal power plants give some employment, but the amount of displacement of employment also that they do is far larger. In terms of a just transition, which is giving a cleaner environment, and we have seen that during the COVID lockdowns, in terms of just transition, which will give people a better employment in greater numbers, in terms of a sustainable earth where people will have a habitable earth more than us, the future generation, the current children's generation and their next generation will have a habitable earth without climate extremes and climate catastrophe. And if we have to have a sustainable energy system that runs the economy for a very long time to come without disturbing the basis, ecological basis of our life, because life cannot just go on with electricity. Life has to have ecological services of oxygen, of water, clean oxygen, clean air, clean water, clean environment. So, that has to be sustained, and that way we must rethink and reimagine what kind of economy, what kind of energy from this new economy will have, and that economy will have to be placed under the priorities of ecological sustenance. We will have an economy, and all economies run on energy everywhere, but that economy and that energy which runs that economy will have to come under the larger consideration of sustainable ecology, prosperous ecological systems, and only that will sustain a prosperous human being.